Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:06. Thanks for joining us here on a Wednesday morning. Poor Nikki Haley. Michigan is just not her state, it seems. Well, that's okay. Better luck next time. She'll win. I was going to say she'll win her home state, but that's already in the past. I don't know what's going on with Nikki Haley. We'll see. Hey, at 6:35, Cal Thomas is going to be here. At 7:05, Eddie Garcia, who is running for the Republican nomination for Senate in Virginia. 8:05, Peter Schweitzer, brand new book, Blood Money, about China and, well, the Bidens and the Democrats. 8:35, Tom Bevan of Real Clear Politics to analyze and break down what just happened in the Wolverine State. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Good morning, Julie. I mean, listen, Tom Bevan's fantastic, and he'll sort of give us a way forward here, but I don't think you need much expertise to see what happened here in Michigan. Trump beat Haley by a huge margin, like 45, 50 points, I think was the final. Look here, Trump had 68%. She had 26%, so 42 points. That's with about two-thirds of the vote, and it seemed to be coming on in there in the same fashion. Meanwhile, over on the Democrats, and we'll get to Nikki in a second, I'm still astounded by Joe Biden over there on the Democrat side, who, of course, won because he was basically literally unopposed.
Right.
But we mentioned this yesterday, that there was a movement, especially amongst the Dearborn, Michigan, Palestinian-American, Rashida Tlaib
fans.
You could call them terrorists.
Yes.
Who were wanting to send a message that Joe Biden was just, not really getting it done for them because he was a little too friendly to the Jews.
Yes.
And so they decided, hey, we're going to send a protest vote here. We're going to show up and vote undecided. And nobody ever thought that that was going to actually defeat Joe Biden, but the whole point was to send a message. Mm-hmm. And I thought, listen, 25,000 votes would be a message. 50,000 votes would be a message. 75,000. They got over 100,000.
Yeah, that can change an election.
100,000 Michiganders, making up 13% of the Democrat electorate in the primary, showed up just to say to Joe Biden, no thank you.
Yep.
That's got to send a message at some point. And it's not like Republicans were crossing over, because I think it sure shows in the Republican numbers. The turnout was overwhelming for Donald Trump. Just to put it in perspective, Joe Biden got 617,000 votes, running basically unopposed. Donald Trump got 756,000 votes. Running against Nikki Haley, who got 295,000 votes. So this was not Republicans crossing over to mess with Joe Biden. These were Democrats who said, please send us someone else.
But it does tell you about some of the radical voters in Michigan.
Yeah.
I mean, they are different. The vast majority, new polling is coming out, showing that the vast majority of American support Israel in the war, and Michigan voters are not like the rest of Americans.
No. Well, certainly not Democrats.
Not Democrats.
Yeah. And I can also tell you this, the night before the Michigan primary, Axios had a scoop. So when Axios gets a scoop about the Biden administration, it means some political operative at the White House said, we got to get this story out, so we're going to leak it. And what was the story? Biden administration gave Israel until mid-March to sign a letter providing assurances it will abide by international law while using U.S. weapons and allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. In other words, they tried to get this message out the night before the primary that we're on your side. We're on the Palestinian side. We're on Hamas's side. That's a clear indication too that he knew what was going on.
Well, and yesterday Biden's out there licking his ice cream, talking about how he's going to have a ceasefire before really an official announcement. So. Yeah, there was some panicking, I think.
Absolutely. So let's get back to Nikki Haley. What's she doing? What is this all about exactly? I mean, read the room, as the kids like to say. There's speculation that she's staying in because either A, this is going to set her up to be the presumptive nominee next time in 28, which makes no logical sense because right now this is Trump's party. And the people who are committed to Donald Trump are annoyed by the fact that she's draining time and resources and money.
People who aren't necessarily committed to Donald Trump, but are like, can we all just kind of come together and focus on Biden, which is really an existential threat to our country.
That's true, because she's spending whatever political capital she has, she spends all of it trashing Trump.
Exactly.
Instead of trashing the real problem.
Right.
And that's not really how a political party functionary
Well, she also
works.
a lot of her messaging is, we need to stop being silly. We need to get serious.
Right.
And if you really want to get serious, maybe bail out and support the leader.
Right, and be a part of a serious solution.
Yeah.
Also, the other message that she has all the time is it's time for generational change. The American people don't want these two old candidates, which takes away one of the it negates one of the prime arguments that Trump has been making, which is Biden's incompetent, because she's saying, oh, well, they both are.
No, exactly.
They're both past their prime.
Yes.
They're both too old.
Which is a liberal talking point.
That's
which
the
is
Democrats' talking point.
Yes, exactly. They're saying, oh, he said Mercedes Schlapp, which is
right.
absolutely
He confused his wife,
false.
It's a lie.
It's
a 100%
total
lie. This thing. Oh, even Joe Biden did this when he was on Seth Meyers. He said, well, he doesn't even know his wife's name. He was on stage. He mentioned the first lady. And when there was a standing ovation, he immediately turned to Mercedes Schlapp, who was sitting in the front row, and said, wow, look at that, Mercedes.
My wife, our great first lady, she was a great friend. People loved her. Yeah, people love her. Oh, look at that. Wow.
He obviously goes,
Mercedes, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and he's saying, look, she's getting a big hand here. Hey,
And
Mercedes, look at that.
Some, let's be generous and call them uneducated or ignorant reporters, says he just called his wife Mercedes.
Who don't, Mercedes was sitting, they don't know that she was sitting right in the front row.
They willfully don't.
They don't. And honestly, when he went on Seth Meyers made the joke before Joe then went on. It was set up for him.
Of course.
And the whole thing with Seth Meyers was so cringe-inducing.
But you're right. Nikki Haley staying in and keeping up this whole storyline that Donald Trump is just as bad as Biden helps Biden.
Yes.
So what's she doing? Is she hoping for a fight on the floor of the convention? Does she think that if something happens, listen, I have no doubt if Donald Trump is convicted of a felony between now and the day of the convention in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I have no doubt that someone will propose to the chair a resolution that the Republicans not nominate someone who has been convicted of a felony. I'm telling you right now, that will happen. And it will probably be voted down. But it would, I believe, require, well, now let me think about it. I know it would require 2/3 of the delegates at the convention to remove Donald Trump. But it might only take a clear majority of the delegates to pass a resolution that effectively removes Donald Trump, and maybe that's their angle. All we need is a majority, and by passing a resolution that says we won't nominate someone who's been convicted of a felony, that de facto removes Donald Trump. That could be their plan here. But are they going to get 50% of delegates who have been committed to Donald Trump at this convention and throw it in the cast? And even if you think they will, it's not like they're going to say, and now we want Nikki Haley.
No. In fact, I think she's made them angry enough that they would go for I don't know who they'd go for, but they would not go for her. She's coming off as a Liz Cheney figure.
You're right.
She is really, I think, becoming loathsome to a lot of people.
Which is unfortunate. In fact, let's continue this, because I think she does truly run the risk here of damaging her future political prospects.
I think she already
if
has.
She hasn't already, at least with the Republican Party. And by the way, maybe that's the plan. Maybe it's the no labels thing. Maybe she becomes a Democrat. Let's see. A little bit more analysis on yesterday's Michigan primary, not exactly based on who won, about who came in second.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
WMAL. Making sense of the headlines. Because common sense isn't so common. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
So is Nikki Haley planning on going third party? She keeps saying that the same message that she keeps repeating over and over again is that I'm a woman of my word and I'm not going to drop out. I'm going to keep running. I'm going to keep running because the American people need a better choice. Now, if you read into that a little too much, you could easily take away that if the message is the American people want somebody other than these two, and I'm not going away, then the only reasonable explanation is she's going to go third party. I wonder if there are conversations right now. The people who are behind the no labels thing, they are vehemently anti-Trump.
Yes.
And Nikki Haley pulling a quarter of the Republican voters away. I don't think she would take all of her voters from the Republican ticket if she goes third party, but she'd take some.
Yep.
And, right now, I saw the analysis yesterday from Decision Desk HQ, did an analysis of RFK's candidacy and where he continues to poll, who it hurts. And it definitely hurts Joe Biden more. And if you sort of extrapolate out his support right now to the Electoral College map, RFK Jr. staying in the race gives Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania from Joe Biden to Donald Trump.
Oh, wow.
Which gives Donald Trump the presidency. The only way to mitigate that, because RFK Jr. is not going away, and one could argue that I think his strength actually grows as we get closer and closer as Biden continues to fail. The only way to mitigate that is to have someone else run as an independent or a third-party ticket who can hurt Donald Trump. And you could make the argument that that's Nikki Haley.
It just is disappointing, though, that she's willing to be used in that way as a pawn. And I know I sound a little naive, but she doesn't strike me as someone who, because ultimately that will give Biden the presidency.
She ends her career as a Republican at that point if she does that. Where is she supposed to go, though? The only next step for her politically, if she doesn't want to run for president again, which clearly I think she does want to run for president again.
I think she does, and that's...
Unless she somehow makes amends and she goes back and she replaces Tim Scott in the Senate after he becomes Donald Trump's vice president.
Yeah.
But I don't think South Carolina wants her. So where does she go? And the answer is third party.
Maybe.
Or back to the boardroom of Boeing.
I think there's still an opportunity to make amends and go back to South Carolina and build her career there and go for this. I don't think it's over.
Yeah.
But the longer she stays on, I'm genuinely confused. And again, if the strategy here is to hurt Trump, she will be seen as a tool and will get more Biden.
Yeah. Well, and as we read these tea leaves, maybe our biggest mistake here in trying to figure out why Nikki Haley is doing it, what's in it for Nikki Haley, is we're analyzing Nikki Haley's future political prospects. And that's maybe not really what's going on here. Nikki Haley isn't doing this to help Nikki Haley. The people who are funding her are not doing this to help Nikki Haley. Maybe they both have the same agenda, which is not helping Nikki Haley, it's hurting Donald Trump.
That's right. And I'm really pretty
shocked. But then
shocked.
what?
But I don't...
Well, let's face it. If you have a high public profile in politics or the media and your new job is to harm Donald Trump, you are richly rewarded. Let's face it.
That is true.
Oh, if I wanted to cash out, I assure you, that's a payday.
Yeah.
That is a payday.
Oh, believe me. Alyssa Farrar is making bank.
There you go.
On The View.
Perfect example.
She's a total traitor to her former boss. Right. And that in Washington, you do not do. I don't talk about my former boss that I worked on the Hill, and I worked for a lot of members.
Unless there's a big payout.
And I do not. Right. Exactly. No one's offered, but that is just something you just don't do in Washington.
Right.
So I get it. There is, and particularly if it's Donald Trump.
Oh yeah, everybody who says that the grifters and the people who are just doing it for a buck are the people who, despite their actual principles and values, are promoting Donald Trump. Guys, I'm sorry.
Are you serious?
I'm sorry. The especially in the media realm.
The Bulwark,
right?
The Dispatch. These are based on the hatred of Trump,
and the real money in the media is in the major legacy publications like the Washington Post and the New York Times, or in network television. And if you look at the networks, if you look at the major cable stations who are tantamount to networks, from Jonah Goldberg to Bill Kristol to Charlie Sykes to Steve Hayes to Jennifer Rubin to David French. On and on and on. They're all at the New York Times, Washington Post, right. NBC, ABC, CNN, Chris Christie. You can go on and on and on. That's where the money is.
That's right.
And that's maybe where Nikki Haley's headed. Maybe she'll have her own show on CNN prime time.
Could be. They really do need to replace Joy Reid.
That's never going to happen. It's 5:23. It's 5:36. It's O'Connor and Company. Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. And at 6:35, Cal Thomas will be here. 7:05, Eddie Garcia running for Senate in Virginia. 8:05, Peter Schweitzer on his new book. And 8:35, Tom Bevan, Real Clear Politics. Julie.
Yes. Good morning.
You know I lived in California before I moved here.
I do know that.
I didn't. People get confused.
That's why you hate the snow.
Why I hate the snow. That's why I hate the snow. I love the snow as long as you can go up to the mountains, see the snow, and then come back to the beach where it's warm, where you belong,
fine.
Where human beings are supposed to be.
Sure, got it. All right, let's move on.
People get confused because they know that my heart is in Michigan because that's where I was born.
I should not have.
But then I moved to California,
we were doing
and
so good.
I lived, 25 years of my life in California. I feel connected to California. So when I see stories about California, I also think
That's right. Well, this is a nice segue. There we go.
California is also a bellwether for the rest of the country because the libs try everything in California. And when it fails there, they say, well, it's
bellwether. They ruin everything for the rest of the country.
Yeah, I mean it in a good way. It's like a canary in the coal mine. How about that?
Better.
The canary dies.
Dead canary.
But usually, when the canary dies, like a policy in California, you assume, oh, let's not do that anymore. Let's get out of here because we're all going to die. Well, yeah. No, so instead, there's they always rationalize and say, well, the reason it didn't work in California is because it needs to go nationwide.
Right.
See,
it's
that's
the whole
that's
communism didn't work because it hasn't really been tried.
Not truly. And of course, when they do try it in a country, it's like, yeah, see, the problem is there are other countries who aren't communist. So how about world domination? That's the only way it really works. That's truly what they'll tell you.
Yes.
So California now is the new frontier when it comes to illegal immigration and border crossings. And it's a beautiful thing to see because, it's a sanctuary state.
That's right.
In fact, Gavin Newsom has gone overboard to let illegal immigrants in this country know that if they make it to the Golden State, they'll get free health care. Free health care. California citizens don't get free health care.
Unbelievable.
But if you're in the country illegally, you do get free health care. That's Gavin Newsom's plan. And so now they're all starting to flood in there. The other reason why they're starting to flood in there is the other major thoroughfare up from Mexico into America is Texas. And the governor there kind of doing the opposite.
That's right.
He's not saying if you come here illegally, we'll give you free health care. He's not even saying if you come here illegally,
you can stay.
You're on your own.
No, he's shipping them out.
No, he's putting razor wire up.
That's
and saying,
right.
you know what, you shouldn't be coming
he's putting
here.
them on buses
Yeah.
and shipping them to Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, so here's the latest. San Diego illegal immigrant shelter forced to shut down after running out of funds due to increased demand. What do you mean running out of funds? There's no such thing as running out of funds when you've got government money.
Right.
Just keep printing it. Yeah.
Just print more.
What's the problem? There's no hold up there. Maybe it's an inflationary thing. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, Macy's Union Square location is closing. Now, for anybody who doesn't know San Francisco, until very recently, I would argue probably the most beautiful city in America, honestly, in every possible way.
Yeah.
Used to be. Union Square is sort of a hub of commerce and theater and arts and just great place. That Macy's, iconic. Now, this is
an anchor store. It anchors that area. And my friend Inez Stepman, she's at IWF. She works with Patrice and I. She is from San Diego. And she said on Twitter, this is insane. This is the anchor of Union Square. I can't imagine the place without it. The willful destruction of San Francisco is a tragedy again. Inez grew up there. So it was interesting. I don't really understand what it is, but this is a massive blow to the city.
And you could argue, well, retail stores and department stores are a thing of the past. You see JCPenney's closing, you see Sears closing, and you'd be right. Absolutely, that's the truth. But the last Macy's to turn off the lights when everything is all said and done is going to be the Macy's in New York City, of course, the famous Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade Macy's, and this one. And this one is not
And
closing.
There's a difference. People need to understand this isn't like the anchor of a mall. So, in Northern Virginia, Landmark Mall is now gone. And there used to be, a Macy's on one side and a Sears on the other. This isn't a mall, Macy's. This is the downtown area. It has iconic value to the area. And again, they're closing it because of crime.
Yeah.
And it's not safe for the workers down there. And nobody wants to go down there if they're going to get mugged.
In other cities like New York or Chicago or Philadelphia or D.C. for that matter, who are dealing with what they believe to be a temporary influx of illegal immigrants coming into the country, they're they're dealing with them by setting up temporary solutions, right? We saw in New York they tried this whole tenting thing,
That's right.
Or in Chicago they took over a high school.
Or they take away community centers where kids play sports.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're all supposed to be like temporary solutions because we got to deal with this rush and then we'll get back to normal. In San Diego, the county supervisors there, they see the writing on the wall. They just voted 4-1 to create a long-term illegal, what they're calling migrant center and shelter, a long-term illegal immigrant shelter, because they know this ain't going away under the current regime. Here's the problem, though. I love this. I love government in action. The County Board of Supervisors just voted 4-1 to create a long-term permanent illegal immigrant care facility in their city because they're very close to the border there, and they just don't see this going away. Now they're taking up a proposition on how to pay for it.
Of course. I wonder how they'll pay for it.
Cart, horse.
Yes.
Like, okay, we got to do this. We're going to do this. Okay, look at us. We did it. Now, how are we going to pay for it? Well, that's the next step. And of course, we know how they're going to. Now, they claim they're going to search for federal funding. And let's face it. Listen, Democrats know there's a lot of votes in California. So I'm sure that they will find some way to funnel money over to California, because if they lose California and New York, they're done. Their history in Illinois. So they do find a way to get money out there. So I have no doubt this is worse than Gavin Newsom raising taxes on an already overtaxed population to pay for something like this. Instead, the taxpayers of North Dakota will pay for this.
That's right.
The taxpayers of Vermont will pay for this with our federal tax dollars.
Yeah, it is. It's despicable.
But that's California, and we tell you this so that you can just sort of be aware, because I assure you every single thing that happened in California over the last 10 years is on the agenda for Democrats in Virginia. In Maryland, well, Maryland is California, but without the palm trees. 543. What have we hit here? We hit the election in Michigan, where Nikki Haley's campaign is spiraling down the drain.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, who has a major threat now from undecided. They're getting 13% of the vote in Michigan. The disaster on our border, California falling off the cliff. Ooh, here's a disaster. How about Joe Biden's foreign policy?
There we go.
Yeah. Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell had a meeting in the White House trying to strong-arm
But
Speaker
there seems
Mike
to be
Johnson.
no daylight between McConnell, who apparently, I hear he's a Republican, and Joe Biden.
Apparently, this
side.
this entire meeting at the White House, where we have a budget crisis coming up and a huge crunch and still a disaster at the border, and Mike Johnson, God bless him, is doing whatever he can to keep the eye on helping Americans and helping the border situation. Apparently, from all reports, the entire thing was to strong-arm Mike Johnson about Ukraine funding. Ukraine.
Is just unbelievable.
That's the agenda. It's all about you. Here's Chuck Schumer as he emerged from the West Wing.
The meeting on Ukraine was one of the most intense I have ever encountered.
It was a meeting. What do you mean meeting on Ukraine? This was a meeting about a ton of things. It was supposed to be. And by the way, when you hear this, I want you to listen to the anger and intensity in his voice, the passion in his voice. Do you ever hear Chuck Schumer, or for that matter, most of this, about anything having to do with us?
Right.
Having to do with our country's borders, our citizens, and what benefits us or benefits or improves our living conditions.
Yes.
Listen to the intensity about Ukraine.
In my many meetings in the Oval Office, the five of us, the President, the Vice President, Leader McConnell, Leader Jeffries, and myself, made it so clear how vital this was to the United States. This was so important. And that we couldn't afford to wait a month or 2 months or 3 months, because we would, in all likelihood, lose the war. NATO would be fractured at best. Allies would turn away from the United States. And the boldest leaders, the boldest autocrats of the world, the Putins, the Xis, the presidents of North Korea and Iran, would be emboldened, thinking that the United States was this soft, fat country that lost its way and would take advantage.
God, they really love the United States, don't they? Can I give you a little insight into, I think, what's going on here? And by the way, Johnson came in there and saying, listen, guys, we got to talk about a lot of things here, but we ain't getting any of this done if we don't get serious about the border and we do something seriously, specifically about this. And McConnell turned to him and said, we're here to talk about Ukraine.
Unbelievable.
That's the reporting that's coming out of this meeting. So here's what's happening. if I may, and take it for what it's worth. You got a lot of people who analyze this stuff and give you their opinions. You know how Republicans mistakenly walked down this road with Democrats to come up with a border and immigration package, a bill
Reform.
that the Democrats knew was not going anywhere. They emerged from that meeting, sent poor James Lankford out there to sell this thing that was barely going to get out of the Senate caucus, let alone it was dead on arrival in the House before anyone. Democrats knew that. They didn't care. They didn't want a solution. What they wanted was a political weapon, and they got it. They're using it. You see them all the time now, all over the place, saying, "Well, doing a media appearance."
Something about the border.
Sure, the border is a crisis.
Republicans
You're
chose
right.
not to.
All the Republicans' fault. They can't be responsible to lead. You can't give them it because they won't lead. That's the whole point of that whole exercise. And that's what we're seeing right here. They can see that Ukraine is in trouble. They can see that this war is not going Ukraine's way. And what they're trying to, and this is all Joe Biden's fault. This is Joe Biden and the Democrats refused to ever, we were at a stalemate for 2 years, and they refused to ever allow even the consideration for a ceasefire and peace talks. For 2 years now, that's been happening. And if you dare to suggest that maybe there should be.
And it's not just Democrats.
Oh, I know.
Awful lot of Republicans, Larry.
Plenty of them.
Who also don't want to see any kind of negotiated settlement, want to just keep funding absolute pipeline to Ukraine.
Right. With no solution in sight. And now as things are not going well, they don't care about the people of Ukraine. They don't care about Russia. They don't care about geopolitical strategy and a 4D chessboard. All they care about is deflecting the blame. And this is their war, and it's about to go south, and so they need to say, hey, we need to blame someone. And so if the Republicans don't give them everything that they want in Ukraine, even if they do now, even if Republicans do give us, they waited too long.
Right.
It's their fault.
Right. That
this entire thing, the reason why Ukraine fell is because the Republicans weren't on board, and they are contrary to American interests and American values and blah, 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 blah,
So
blah.
you can't win.
Nope.
Republicans can't win, and yet McConnell is going along with this.
Right.
He's helping them accomplish this.
That's right. And that's where we are. And when people complain about, the deep state, and when they say, how does this happen? And when they say, it's this permanent political class, or they want to use the uniparty, but this is a perfect example of it. And I do believe that Mike Johnson is trying to do the right thing and the best thing. He's got hardly any votes to work with.
And honestly, it's not just that they lack passion about the United States and the problems on our border and the fact that people are being killed in our country and fentanyl's coming over the border and our nation is in a precarious situation. They also don't have this passion for Israel. It is really shocking. It just seems they have reserved all passion for Ukraine.
Yep.
We just don't see that on both our domestic issues and Israel, which to me is a much more scary issue.
Well, yeah, and meanwhile, at the same time, Biden is throwing Israel under the bus by giving them a deadline and insulting them on a public stage by saying, you need to make sure that you adhere to international humanitarian standards.
As if they're not.
Before you use U.S. weapons, which is a condition, by the way, that should already be baked in the cake when we sell weapons to a country. We shouldn't sell weapons to any country that we think might violate those things. So it's insulting to Israel.
Of course, yes.
Thank you. It's despicable. It's disgusting. And you can see right now, I'm telling you, the Ukraine war is about to take a turn. I don't know that because I'm a great military strategist, clearly, but I understand politics and I understand what Democrats do. This is what they always do. All they care about is blaming Republicans, and you're seeing it now. Ukraine is going south, and they just care about blaming Republicans. It's 5:53.